Members of the committee, we're now live.
Good evening, council members, members of staff, and those of you watching from home. Welcome to tonight's Committee of the Whole Operations and Admin for October the 5th, 2021. Let me ask you to rise if you're able to and join me in the invocation. As we come together today, we recognize the great responsibilities laid upon us. Our council will always strive to understand the needs of the people we serve and to use power wisely and well. Our purpose is to establish and maintain a city of prosperity and righteousness where freedom prevails and where justice rules. Let us also not forget those who served our community and who are no longer with us, so we can continue to do the work we must in their memory. Please be seated, folks. I'm going to ask the clerk, Chris Gauthier, if he has the roll call.
Through the chair, roll call has been taken.
Thank you, sir. I'll remind members of the committee that we're operating under COVID rules and procedures, and I'm sure you all know it by now, so I'm going to move on and ask if there's any declarations of conflicts of interest. Seeing none, thank you very much. I'll now ask for separations of all the items before us. As Councillor Antosky.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Item 6.1.5, meeting process review, please.
Councillor, thank you. Is there anything further that members of committee would like to separate for discussion tonight? Thank you very much. Seeing no further, Councillor Antosky, could I have you bring forward the resolution to approve all the items that we have not separated? And tell me who your seconder is.
Sure. Sorry, I don't have it on screen. As moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Carpenter, that all items not separated for discussion be approved.
Excellent. Can I
Is
ask
that close?
thank you. Could I ask the clerk to read those items aloud before the vote?
Through the chair, the items that are subject to the vote are as follows. Item 6.1.1, natural bureaus. Item 6.1.2, traffic control, yield right-of-way signs to stop signs. Item 6.1.3, housekeeping, Albion Street parking control bylaws. Item 6.1.4, 2021 Ontario 55+ Winter Games recommendation for postponement. Item 6.1.6, September 8th Southwest Task Force report. Item 6.2.1, the minutes. And item 6.2.2, winter maintenance update 2021-2022.
Chris, thank you. And we'll now go to the question on this.
All items not separated for discussion purposes carries unanimously on recorded votes. Members of the committee voting in favor are as follows. Councillors Vanderstel, Sless, Marn, Antosky, Wall, Van Tilburg, Carpenter, McCreary, and Utley.
Chris, thank you for that. We're going to now go to presentations of delegations. And committee members will be aware that there were no delegations listed for tonight. However, we did receive a late request to speak, and that's going to require a 2/3 vote to waive the rules. Councillor Martin, could you bring that forward, please? And I understand this is seconded by Councillor Sless.
Correct. I'm moving, seconded by Councillor Sless, that section 15.6.2 regarding the delegation submission deadline of 9 a.m. be waived to permit Tim Phillip to appear as a delegation.
Councillor, thank you very much. Any discussion on this, guys? Seeing none, we'll go to the question then.
The motion to waive the rules regarding the submission deadline for delegation carries on recorded vote of 8-1. Members of the committee voting in favor are as follows. Councillors Vanderstel, Sless, Marn, Antosky, Wall, Van Tilburg, McCreary, Utley. Those opposed, Councillor Carpenter.
Councillor, thank you very much for that. Thank you for the vote, folks. I guess we're now going to go to the delegation. Chris, do you know if he's in the waiting room? Mr. Phillip, if you can hear me, you have 10 minutes and you may proceed when you're ready. And I am running the clock.
I appreciate the opportunity to speak, and I want to thank the committee for allowing me to do so under the rules. I'm appearing here on behalf of the Brant Historical Society, and there, I got my video working. Hard to believe I was one of the guys that brought internet to this community, isn't it? I'm here as the president of the Brant Historical Society. I want to talk about the creation of the Heritage District that's on your agenda for tonight, and I'd like to speak in favor of it. As you are probably all well aware, Brantford has a very, very rich history, industrial history, social history, going all the way back into the times of when the indigenous peoples were the only people here. And we have a lot of resources in this community, and these resources for looking at our history and learning about our history and interpreting our history are all available here. And the problem is that the entire cultural society is, you know, when you're looking at paying your bills and all of the other things that go on in life, sometimes it's very easy to forget culture, not only history and other things, but also the music and the arts as well. And I'm very pleased to see that council is starting to take a look at creating a sort of a comprehensive look at the heritage and artistic communities and trying to put together some sort of a proposal that will meet the needs of all of them. I mean, we have museums here that are basically nationally recognized, you know, with the Bell Homestead, and we have wonderful museums like the Canadian Military Heritage and all of the other museums and cultural activities that are available in our town. And it's very important that we look after these resources. And unfortunately, there's been a great disparity in the support that has been provided to the many museums. And this has all been a result of, shall we say, historical forces. And I'm very glad that the city, and on behalf of the society, we're very glad that the council has decided to start taking a look at this sector and to try and create something that I think that will go into the next centuries to preserve our history, interpret our history, and ensure that all of these cultural activities survive. So I think that's really all I wanted to say, just to provide support. I'm looking very much forward to participating in the discussions that happen further, and I think you'll find a lot of support within the museum and cultural and heritage community. So that's all I had, and I'm happy to take any questions if you have.
Tim, thank you very much. And I do see that Councillor Wall has a hand up to speak. Councillor Wall, go ahead, please. You have the floor.
Thank you, Acting Mayor McCreary. Tim, thanks for coming. Thanks for your support of this.
Happy to be here.
You've been around the block a couple of times, especially with things to do with museums and such. Can you tell me, in your time, what are some successful endeavors or projects that museums have worked together on in the past for our community?
Well, you know, the museums all collaborate a lot with through the Museums and Galleries Association. They've joined together into an association that's ably assisted by city staff. And we try to bring all of our needs together and work on ways of solving the issues that we all face. I can speak most knowledgeably about about my own museum, the Brant Museum, and we just entered into a collaboration, for instance, which I'm very pleased to talk about, which is we've entered into a collaboration with the Canadian Military Heritage Museum to share some IT resources. The museum has a fairly sophisticated project underway to digitize all of the resources that we have, all of the documentation, artifacts, and our plan is eventually to put all of these things online. And a similar project was considered by the Military Heritage Museum. I mean, they have they have pieces of paper that were written on scraps of paper in a trench in World War I with a pencil. And the difficulty is a lot of these documents were never meant to be preserved, never meant to be anything other than a quick note to a family member or to somebody else. And they're starting to fade. So we entered into a collaboration with them. We had the expertise in terms of our digitization project, and we've assisted them in getting up and running with a digitization project of their own. We've created a network that actually links the two museums so that the information that we have in our museum is being stored down on the computer system at the Military Heritage Museum, and their information is being stored at the Brant Museum as well. So I think that's a perfect example of the types of collaboration that we can do by looking at the strengths of each organization and working together. I mean, that's what everybody's aim is to share the rich history in this community. And I think this is a perfect example of that kind of collaboration.
How much time we got left, Acting Mayor McCurry?
You're the only hand up, so I'm quite happy to just let you keep asking these.
All right, one more question, just because again, Tim is a wealth of information and I value his opinion. If this all were to go exactly according to plan in a perfect world, what is the biggest hurdle we're going to have to overcome?
Well, that's a little difficult for me to say. I mean, the proposal that's before the committee tonight is to set up a group to determine what the needs are and try to make some sort of a suggestion and move forward. You know, obviously, I think the greatest difficulty that probably faces us is just making sure that we get a common vision that we can move forward with that meets everybody's needs. I mean, I think the needs of the different museums are all quite disparate. And, you know, certainly for the Brant Museum, our biggest need is for stable core funding. And I know there are other museums that are in the same boat. And I think that that's why we welcome very much this effort to kind of look at the entire sector in a more holistic manner and move forward to something. As I said, Brantford has an extremely rich history, and I think most people aren't aware of just how rich a history we have here. And I think it's a shame that that's the case. And I think as museums, we've not necessarily done the best job that we could because the resources have been limited. So, you know, everything is resource constrained. As you know, it's all a zero-sum game. So we're just going to have to see where it ends up. But certainly, on behalf of the Brant Historical Society, we're looking forward to collaborating with this effort.
Thanks, Tim.
Thank you, Councillor.
Yes, thank you, Councillor, and thank you, Tim, for your presentation tonight. We'll be getting to that item shortly as we have something of an abbreviated agenda before us tonight. So thank you again. Councillor Wall, let me ask you if you would introduce the resolution to put on the floor the only item separated, which is 6.1.5, and state your seconder, please.
Yes, moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Van Tilburg, my ward mate, that this item is separated for discussion.
Councillor, thank you. And Councillor Antosky, it was your desire to separate, so you have the floor to speak first to this item. Go ahead, please.
Thank you, Acting Mayor McCurry. Yeah, I'm looking to make an amendment. In section 2.1, qualifications of members, the way it's currently worded, it says preference will be given to the appointment of persons who are the owner and tenant of land or the spouse of said owner or tenant of land in the city of Brantford, which makes sense that we want to give preference to City of Brantford people, but it does not say anything about the qualifications. So you could have someone apply for a committee that is not qualified, but because they live in the City of Brantford, they would get preference. So I would like to try an amendment, and Michael, do you have that? Or sorry, Chris is there. That when considering applications to city boards, advisory committees, task forces, and other committees to which council makes appointment, preference shall be given to the appointment of persons who are most qualified. And I'm seeking a seconder for that amendment. I see Councillor Hartley's hand. Yeah.
Councillor, let me ask you. Thank you. Councillor, let me ask you. I don't see any hands up to speak to the motion prior to the amendment, so we'll let that stay on the floor. Are you amending, are you replacing the phraseology that speaks about preference to local candidates?
Yes, we're amending it to say, yes, we have taken that out, actually. It's to the most qualified candidate, regardless of.
So your intention is to strike that.
Yes.
Okay. I'm gonna rule that if you want to remove that, I would suggest that that we separate that at the time of the vote. The amendment, I think, is contrary to what is in the amendment is contrary to the wording that you're replacing. So I'm not sure that that's kosher, quite frankly.
With your indulgence, may I try rewording then, please?
I'm going to ask you to hang on to that. I do have Councillor Utley. Councillor Utley, are you on the main motion or on the amendment?
On the amendment, Mr. Chair.
Okay, so we'll deal only with the amendment. Councillor Antosky, you still have the floor for 1:28.
If this is to be ruled out of order the way it's worded now, I think that we could incorporate both by saying if the most qualified applicants are equally qualified, preference would go to Brantford resident, spouse, tenant, however that's all worded in there.
Sorry, Councillor. Do you want to repeat that so we can make sure we capture that?
Yep, if the most qualified applicants are equally qualified, preference will go to, and then the rest of the wording is persons who are the owner or tenant of land or the spouse of said land or tenant or land in the city of Brantford.
Okay, I guess we'll let that stand. It's I'm going to hear from Councillor. Does that conclude your remarks?
It does. Thank you, sir.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Utley, you have the floor. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I mistakenly thought the amendment, that was an amendment going into being added to the resolution. And correct me if I'm wrong here, but through you to Councillor Antosky, are you asking that the most qualified people be omitted or be included?
Councillor Antosky will have a chance to comment on that if she speaks a second time.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. I'm sorry, guys. I didn't notice who's up next. I'm just going to say Councillor Wall, take the floor now, please. Then Councillor Van Tilburg, then Councillor Sluss.
So my questions, I guess, are for staff, and then I just have some comments. So my first question is, how's this done in other cities, similar cities? Do you have to live in Hamilton to be on a Hamilton committee? Do you have to live in Cambridge to be on a Cambridge committee? Alternatively, do you have to live in Brant to be on a Brant committee? Can people from Brantford serve on Brant committees?
Through the chair, if I may. So there are a variety of different manners in which this is held across different municipalities. So there are certain municipalities that do restrict it to persons within their own limits, and there are others that open it up due to the relationship associated with tiered municipalities, etc. They are open to further than just their own boundaries. I don't have the specifics on those specific municipalities that you've requested.
Understandable. I struggle with this because I don't have a lot of qualifications personally on paper. I have a lot of experience. I've worked for a lot of different organizations. I'm very opinionated. Most people know that. I don't agree, I guess with the wording for the amendment right now in the most qualified according to who? Because I think that if I were to apply for a committee on marketing, I didn't go to university or college for my marketing degree, but I feel like I've got a very great resume should somebody want to choose me to be on a marketing committee. So I think the preference to local people for local committees, local boards, is just fair. I mean, I don't necessarily know that somebody hypothetically from Toronto should be able to pad their resume by going to a community like Brantford with their great big fancy marketing degree and sit on one of our committees and use that as a springboard to go make another city a better place. I think that somebody who lives in Brantford, who's desperately trying to make it maybe, I'm not sure exactly what I'm trying to say. I get it and I understand it that we want qualified candidates, but we also want knowledgeable candidates and people with lived experience. And I think that a priority should be given to people who live and love in Brantford, regardless of their qualifications, but complementary to their qualifications.
Councillor, thank you very much. Councillor Van Tilburg, I believe you're next.
Yeah, I actually wasn't going to support the amendment. It's an initial delivery, but with the addition, it's actually a traditional skills and abilities clause. And that is exactly what we had prior to this rendition of the what we have before us, where it's strictly local. And the reason that I really want to support this is that it reinforces our local nature, and it also reinforces skills and abilities. And quite frankly, we need both. And within the, I would say, most people coming that help in our committees over the years have been Brantford and around the county. When we were dealing with the brownfields, and there's a good 20-year history on this, we had a lot of local, heavily engaged citizens. And I would say that each year that they were on there, they had skills and abilities, and they were learned experiences. You learn about brownfields. We also had some people from the county with incredible knowledge, incredible backgrounds in environmental and in equipment and stuff, and dealing with the particularly the Mohawk Greenwich brownfield. I know that the members on the county in the city respected those members that came from the county with their expertise and knowledge. I know I certainly did. And so what would happen is that had we had the same thing in the background without bringing in people, say, from the county with a lot of environmental background, they wouldn't be participants. Their inputs wouldn't have happened. We might have been missing some stuff. So I don't believe that we should actually block people with good qualifications. And I also believe that having local people is incredibly important. And in the end, all these people come before us, the councillors. We ultimately make the choice so that we're not purposely blocking somebody with a lot of qualifications. We're saying you can come in and we're going to weigh you out. And if we have a local person with, lots of experience, and experience is just not by the book, right? Or going through and I learned this and I learned that. Experience is salt of the earth. You're from here. You know what's going on. You've known the history. You lived in the area a long time, and you know where we want to go. And that's often very important. And sometimes that missing element of where we want to go and how to get there, you get that helping hand from somebody that may not be local. And I had some very, very technical people over those years. I would say that the Mohawk Greenwich brownfield, one of the most complicated things that I ever sat on, period. Incredibly complicated, took a long time, and that expertise was well liked. And under the current things, we wouldn't have those people helping us. And not saying that we wouldn't get there, but I'm saying that their help on the committee was exactly that, very helpful on the committee. And I believe the committee members respect and enjoyed, and I don't think they felt put back because we had people that, their home was in the county, but they worked in the city and they wanted to do something to help. So I prefer this addition to that, to it as a skills and abilities clause with the local element. So thank you for that change. Otherwise, I wouldn't have gone for it.
Councillor, thank you very much. Councillor Sluss, go ahead, please. You have the floor.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. I've got a couple of concerns, and I understand what's trying to be attempted here, but I guess the two concerns I have, you could very well have a majority of a committee of folks that don't live in Brantford. you would like to think and you would hope that they would have regard for the taxpayer money that we collect as a city, but they're making recommendations on spending funds that they have no skin in the game, so to speak. So that concerns me. And the other that concerns me is, in theory, you could potentially have all your committees made out of people that don't live in Brantford. It's unlikely, but that could happen given what our guidelines would be to appoint people. So I guess for those reasons, I'm comfortable with Brantford people doing Brantford things. I think we've got a lot of expertise in this city, and I'm comfortable that we can get good committees coming out of people that live and work and spend their money and pay their taxes to the city of Brantford. So I guess having said that, I won't be supporting the amendment. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Councillor, thank you. And Councillor Martin, you have the floor. Go ahead, please.
Thank you. Yeah, I share the same concerns. One of the things that's been said is that we don't want to block people from outside of Brantford. This does not, the way the original motion is worded, it doesn't block anybody. All it says is we give preference to people from inside Brantford. It doesn't say that we're not going to appoint somebody from outside Brantford. If somebody from outside of the city has good qualifications and there aren't enough qualified people applying, then they can get put on. But if there's equal qualifications, then preference will be given to the person from Brantford. And I think that's only reasonable. The people that are paying taxes in this community are going to be a little more cognizant of recommending big spending. So I don't have any problem with the original resolution, and I won't support the amendment. Thank you.
Councillor, thank you. Before I go to folks who are second time in the queue, is there anybody that hasn't spoken that would like to? Councillor Carpenter? I'm sorry, I didn't notice the hand raised. Go ahead, please.
I wasn't going to speak to this issue until Councillor Martin spoke. I just want to get clarification. I think he said that we would give preference to somebody outside the city if we decided to do so. But my understanding is that anybody that's applied, qualifications or not, would get preference over someone from outside the city, by the way it's written. Could staff clarify that for me, please?
Through the chair, currently the way that the policy is written is that where membership qualifications on city boards, advisory committees, and task forces, and other committees to which council makes appointments are not prescribed by provincial legislation, preference will be given to the appointment of persons who are the owner or tenant of land or the spouse of said owner or tenant land in the city of Brantford. So as it stands, we have qualifications that we have internally, but it's not provincially legislated. So the appointments committee does have the ability to
they're not,
override.
People from outside aren't barred. They're not barred in any way. Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, Councillor, thank you for introducing that clarity. Councillor Toski, you're up next. Go ahead, please.
Thank you. I'm going to try and address a lot of things that have been said. I'll start with the last thing first. We say that they're not barred, but our last appointments committee, we didn't even allow nominations to stand because they lived outside of the city of Brantford. So they didn't even get voted on. So that's where I'm concerned with the way this is written. As questions were asked about qualifications according to who, and it's been mentioned already, it's not just about degrees, and it's not, it really, I mean, experience in the city, experience. Each committee has a listing of what kind of skill set they're looking for, what kind of experience they're looking for. So it's according to the mandate of, or to the requirements of each committee, and some are more technical than others. So, and I think, you know, if they live outside the city, and they're coming to share their expertise with us, we benefit from that as well for free. So, I mean, I think we really need, who has committees that is happy to have unqualified people? It just doesn't make sense. I think that I am all in favor of having preference to Brantford citizens if they are equally qualified. That only makes sense. We don't hire consultants because they live in the city of Brantford. We hire them because they're the best. They fit within what we're looking for through our RFPs, etc. it wasn't too long ago that there was some consideration around disbanding many of these committees because they were regarded as sandwich clubs or things weren't getting done. And so now we're upping the limit, looking for qualifications really, and we've seen that happen in some of our committees. We've had some really good good, strong qualifications specific to whatever committee they are come forward, and those committees have thrived. And you know, if we don't have the expertise for the specific task force, or we're not going to get the work that we need. So I think if the best qualified person does not live in the city of Brantford, I think that the city of Brantford still benefits from that. And keep in mind, it is highly unlikely that we would have a whole committee of out of Brantford people for many reasons. It's advertised within Brantford, you know, and this is really simply going back to how it was prior to the change that was made here that gives preference only to city of Brantford people. We're just going back to where it was. If they're equally qualified, it goes to Brantford for sure. And, you know, when we ask about how are they qualified, what qualifies them, each of these committees and task forces has a council member representative on these groups, and they can speak to some of these. We talk about that. We say, look, I know this person's really involved in this. They've done this. They've got this expertise. That's what we do. So I think that we have to be prudent about this. If we want good information and we want good output, we need good qualified candidates. And that's not to say that they don't exist in Brantford in every single facet, but we need to get them to apply then. So instead of worrying about having all out of Brantford people, then that's really encourage the people that we know in the city of Brantford to apply for these committees. And once we're meeting back in person again, you're not going to be getting a lot of people from out of town coming to try and get to all of these meetings. So I think this is fair. I think this is something that you would see in most businesses or organizations that have a preference to local workforces, local candidacy. But the qualifications have to be there. So I'm hoping that this amendment will get supported. It only makes sense. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Vanderstel, you have the floor. Go ahead, please.
They mess us up all the time, Mr. Chair. Thank you. I don't know who I should ask this question of, either Julia or Chris or Tanya. I seem to recall that we have and have had some outstanding vacancies on our committees. We've gone through the process a number of times to bring people in and then issue an appeal again to the public to make sure that we have enough people on a committee. And for whatever reason, over the last 3 years, I seem to recall that there were some vacancies, and perhaps not as many people as we had hoped either had the time or the inclination to come out and share their perspectives and share from their experience. Do we have any idea currently how many vacancies on our committees are existing at the moment?
Through the chair, as it stands currently, we do have a 2 open positions on the Brantford Accessibility Advisory Committee. We have 1 open position on our Brantford Heritage Committee and a member, a specified type of member seeking a member of the bicycle retail industry for our active transportation subcommittee. Those are our current vacancies.
And over the past couple of years, I think we've gone through that process of reissuing invitations to committees a number of times. I can think of 3 times that we've gone back out. Is that consistent with what you recall, Julia?
Through the chair, yes, there have been instances either where we have not received an applicant that the appointments committee deemed to appoint, and or we just sought more because we did not receive applications whatsoever.
Okay, so then by my count anyway, if we've had just a handful of vacant positions on committees, The people that constitute the committee are solely from Brantford, with one odd member out potentially from another location. Correct? 3 to 1, 4 to 1, 5 to 1.
Sorry, are you asking if our applicants are typically from the city of Brantford?
No, I'm asking if we, even if we were to have filled those vacant positions from another a locale outside of Brantford, still the count would be 4 people from Brantford, 1 person from outside of Brantford.
As it stands, correct, yes.
Okay, understood. Okay, I think, thank you, Julia, appreciate it. Thank you for your latitude, Mr. Chair. I think you can kind of see where I'm headed. Why do we leave positions vacant? If someone's able and willing and knowledgeable and wants to contribute and applies, and they're not from Brantford, why do we say no? I'm not sure why. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Councillor. Councillor Utley, go ahead, please. You have the floor.
Thank you, Acting Mayor. Did Councillor Van Tilburg, has he spoken yet?
You go ahead, Councillor.
Okay, thank you. I guess the hang-up word seems to be qualifications, and that could be wide open to all kinds of interpretation. Does it mean a certificate, a diploma, a degree, some formal education or experience in a specific field? I after hearing everybody, I always tried to promote having a matrix of skills for any of our committees and boards. So you don't have 8 people all with the same expertise, which will probably never get them to agree with each other. We need somebody with finance, a business background, marketing, organization skills. They're all so important to helping any committee or task force achieve their goals. So with if I'd like to add a friendly amendment, if I may, if it's okay with the mover, that we include the words as well as qualifications is knowledge, experiences, and knowledge and experiences as well as qualifications. I think we need to round out the interpretation of what we are looking for. I think I'm not sure how. I'll wait until the mover, Councillor Antoski, has an opportunity to speak to that. But I'm going to support the amendment, and I think we just need to do some fine tuning and tweaking to get where we need to be. I think it's, if I'm going to choose between person A and person B, and person B has got all the experience and qualifications that we're looking for, then I think that person should stand a pretty good opportunity to be selected. But in the end, it's us who make that decision. And I'll leave it at that, Mr. Chair, and see where this goes. Thank you.
Councillor, thank you. Did you wish to offer that as an amendment at this time?
Yes, please.
You had asked for friendly from mover and seconder. Could I just get a sign from mover and seconder if that's friendly?
I think I'm okay. May I ask for
No, just a yes or no, please.
Well, I need clarification on it before.
Just a yes or no, and if it's not acceptable, then Councillor Utley.
And I guess it has to be no.
Okay, thank you. So the seconder's opinion is moot. Councillor Utley, did you wish to offer that as an amendment? Get a seconder.
Yes, please. Looking for a seconder.
I see Councillor Van Tilburg as the seconder. Okay, so could I ask your indulgence, Councillor Utley, if you could repeat that, and we'll ask the clerk to put the amendment to the amendment.
Yeah, could we put through you, Mr. Chair, could we put that up on the screen, please? Yeah. Thank you. Here we go.
Councillor Utley, I'm going to start the clock on your speaking opportunity to the amendment on the amendment.
That yeah, I think that reads well. That the definition of qualification includes knowledge, and I wonder if it should be include relevant knowledge and experiences.
Okay, we'll make that adjustment.
And if
And
that's
Councillor Utley,
acceptable to Councillor Van Tilborg,
you still have the floor, Councillor Utley.
okay, that's all I wanted to say at this point, Mr. Chair. So thank you for your indulgence. Thank you.
Councillor, and I thank you for allowing me the opportunity to manage amendments on amendments. Most appreciated. Councillor Van Tilburg, you have the floor, sir.
Yeah, on the amendment to the amendment, what we're witnessing right now is literally a strengthening of the wording. Each one is a progression from the original, and I don't think it's a bad thing. When it comes right down to it, it's us 11 here that ultimately make the decisions. We always weigh towards the local candidate. It's an inherent bias that comes out. We say, hey, so when this says that when all things are equal, we go with the local person. We normally would anyways, right? What this also allows is for other individuals to come and apply. I think what's good about this is that it actually demonstrates what we're looking for if you're coming from the outside, so that you don't get flooded with the silly resume. It's something that's not applicable. I'm really not looking forward to somebody that wants to work on our transportation system that's been living in the county and never rode on a city bus. You know, they would better have something else to back that up. But when I'm looking at some of the other things that we're dealing with, and quite frankly, I think of people that have been on our heritage committees and things like that, spent lots of time in Brantford, happen to live in Paris or moved to Paris or whatever, and all of a sudden can't be on. Or it's not that they can't be on, but might not get on. So the thing of the matter is that no matter what happens, I would like to see as many people contributing and volunteering as possible. I think they all want to do good within the community. And I think that this helps wherever we end up. I think that these additional amendments enhance what the original is. And particularly based on what Councillor Martin said when he clarified what the original wording is. And so to me, I see these clauses all the time within labor negotiations. It is your standard type of a clause stating that it's kind of like what a seniority clause is. When all things are equal, it's seniority. When all things are equal, you're Brantford. It's Brantford. And it's a way actually to reinforce that that's how we do it. So we went from a preference and then to an outline on what we're looking for. And I think that's really good. And as Councillor Vanter still said, it's we really don't want to have empty chairs if there's somebody willing to fill it.
Councillor, thank you very much. Councillor Antosky, go ahead, please.
Thank you. Simply a statement to thank Councillor Utley. The wording is good. It would have been friendly had I been allowed clarification on the wording. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Seeing no further speaking requests, I'll just say a word or two. Could you put that back on the screen, please, Chris? So I do believe that this offers a modicum of clarity to an otherwise unclear amendment, and I think the second amendment before us is quite supportable. Last call for speaking opportunities, and seeing none, we'll go to the question on the amendment to the amendment.
Through the chair, just waiting for Councillor Van Tilburg.
It's already went in and off my screen. I voted in favor.
Thank you, Councillor.
The amendment to the amendment carries unanimously on recorded votes. Members of the committee voting in favor are as follows: Councillors Vanderstelt, Celeste, Martin, Antosky, Utley, McCreary, Carpenter, Van Tilburg, and Wall.
Chris, thank you. So we are now back to the original amendment as once amended. Is there any discussion on the amendment as amended? Councillor Carpenter, go ahead, please.
I guess you have a tough time with that light colored hand. I can change it later. Just the concern I have is that Councillor Toski's amendment won't do what I think she thinks it will do, because the wording still says preference, doesn't say preference may be given. Doesn't say preference might be given. It says, if you read it, and I hope all councillors have, it says preference will be given. Will is automatic. May gives council the opportunity to make adjustments. Will does not. So the wording in here that will not change, as with what Councillor Toski wants to do here. The word will has to be changed. So we don't have her amendment on the board here for us to be able to see exactly word for word, but I just wanted to highlight that. And I wanted to,
I'll get that up there.
speak to the amendment afterwards. Thank you.
Councillor, you still have time, and we are on the amendment as amended.
Did you want to
If you
share
want to
that?
continue.
Do you want to share that?
Yes, the word shall, it needs to be may, preference may be given. I think we have to give council the authority, full authority to make decisions based upon what council sees fit for their appointments. Council must appoint and take responsibility for the committees. The word shall as again is a must. So I would rather see the word may in there where it says preference shall be given, preference may be given. I want council to have the choice, not anyone else. Thank you.
Sorry, folks, just give us a minute. The clerk and I are just having a brief discussion. Sorry, folks, we've had a brief discussion here off camera. Sorry to hold you up. Okay, on the amendment, on the amendment as amended, Councillor Van Tilburg.
On the amendment as amended, I am comfortable with the wording. I am very comfortable with the wording. I believe this does fall into our hands, and that it is when all things are equal, preference will be given to the person in Brantford. I think that's pretty clear. When all things are equal. So what happens is that people can submit their resumes, they will come to us, and we will see them. And if we see that there is a similarity of skills and abilities, it will be someone from Brantford. And if there's somebody who's light years ahead and can really help us out, that person from out of this, probably from the county, most likely that tends to be where it generally is from, will be helping on the committees if the other councillors who vote so see it. And to do that, you also have to get a seconder to have that person's name brought forward. So that is how our process works. I think it's a good, valid process. So I'm comfortable with this wording. I think that's what the community would like to see too, that if we do have people of equal abilities, that it's local. I think that's what it reads, and that's how I'm interpreting.
Councillor, thank you. Any other speakers on the amendment as amended? Seeing none, I'll just say a few words. Although the chair ruled the amendment in order, I don't necessarily consider the amendment to be having the clarity that improves the recommendations made by the committee that spent so much time and so much staff time in terms of bringing forward the original recommendation. I think we currently recognize the skill set as required for things like Brantford Hydro. We appoint folks from outside the community there because there is a very cogent and very necessary skill set that's inherent in that work on behalf of the city of Brantford, and those folks are compensated financially for that contribution to the work that we do. When we look at what we do as committees here in the city of Brantford, this city and this council is populated by some extremely qualified, competent experts on staff who form that expert group, which is there for committee members to use as the sounding board and to be our technical expertise. What we've seen in the past is we've seen some highly qualified folks who seem to want to exert influence unduly on some of the staff, and who seem to think that perhaps their opinions should trump what happens with staff. And in fact, we've had committees that have come into conflict with staff on some of these occasions. So I'm not so sure that the expertise is as important as the love of this community and the desire to serve and better the community. There are lots of opportunities for folks that don't live here to serve on committees in their own communities. And, you know, that's certainly an option for them. And I quite frankly, I don't know why somebody would want to sit on a Brantford committee if they live in the county, or if they live in Norfolk, or if they live at Six Nations. So I definitely will not be supporting this. It's contrary to all the work that was put on this item by staff and by committee. And I really think that we're down a bit of a rabbit hole here. We're engaging in a bit of ad hockery in terms of trying to write this amendment on the fly tonight. And I would like to urge members to support what's before us and defeat the amendment. Perhaps there's an opportunity for something to come back at a later date, which has the clarity, which then can be supported by all members of council, and that could be circulated to staff for comment beforehand. So I would urge folks not to support the amendment, but rather to support the original resolution before us. Last chance for comment. I see none. So Chris, if you could go to the question on the amendment as amended, please.
The amendment to the amendment carries on a recorded vote of 5-4. Members of the committee vote in favor as follows: Councillors Vanderstelt, Antosky, Van Tilburg, Carpenter, Utley. Those opposed, Councillors Sless, Marn, Wall, McCreary.
Chris, thank you. So now, folks, we have the motion as amended 2 times before us on the floor. Councillor Carpenter, you have the floor. Go ahead, please.
Yes, I have a comment, and then I have an amendment. You know, we've had several committees, and we've heard members of council say that we wouldn't want someone sitting on a committee that wasn't a taxpayer. No, we are the city of Brantford, sitting in the center of another municipality called the County of Brant, and we have things that we work on together, and we should be working on together. In fact, we should be working more closely together. We are next to the largest reserve in the country, and we should be doing more with each other than we do. Certainly, the county does more with Six Nations than we do, but that's that's up to us. Secondly, you know, we've had committees. The Mohawk Lake Committee comes to mind, where we had residents from Six Nations. We had residents from the county on that. We had lots of expertise on that committee. We didn't say, wait a minute, now you're not from the city. Well, wait a minute, we didn't do that. So just this kind of thinking that we're talking about here, you know, about saying, you know, it must only be us. And I guess if you're a developer and you own land all over the place, you can sit on any committee you want. But geez, if you're a hard worker and you maybe just have your own house that you got to be careful where you put your name in for a committee. So I have some concern with that issue, but I have an amendment anyways. Having said that, I just want to clear the air there that we're not, Brantford's not an island. So I'd like to make an amendment to 15.85, chapter 15. And this was discussed at the committee level that I sat on. That's to clarify that the allocated member speaking time does not, I want them to amend chapter 15 to clarify that the allocated member speaking time does not include responses from municipal staff. Just to make that clear, so someone's not running the clock out on you. We know we've.
So we're on the appointments now. Yeah. Also, sorry. I believe you're referencing the other part of the item that's on the floor before us.
Yes.
We're dealing just with the appointments with
First,
respect to what's before us right now. Can I ask you to hold?
Yeah, come back to me.
We'll come to that. Okay.
Sure, come back to me when we get to that.
Yeah, super. Okay, thank you. On this, guys, any further comment? Councillor Van Tilburg, go ahead, please.
Yes, I hope this can go through a little bit higher than 5-4. Ward 5 particularly, and then probably this is why where the brownfields have significantly been, the Mohawk Lake, and that the working with our partnerships from county people of Six Nations. The Glebe-lands are right in the midst of this. This is, for me, this is the ward. We are all one when it comes to working together. And like I said, I think we've always made the proper choices in the past, and I think we will continue to do so.
Thank you for that, Councillor. I don't see any other requests to speak. I'll just offer a little clarity that with respect to some of the committees that we appoint, I think what members of council may be thinking is that folks from outside our community are sitting on those boards as citizen appointees, when in fact a lot of them are appointed by other agencies, by the county, by Six Nations, or by places like the Brant Museum and Archives, who are not bound by the residency requirements with respect to the folks they send to us as their delegates. Okay, so Chris, if we could go to the question on the motion as amended twice.
The appointments policy amendment, no, sorry, the appointments policy report as amended carries on a recorded vote of 7-2. Members voting in favor are as follows: Councillors Vanderstel, Martin, and Toski, Wall, Van Tilburg, McCreary, Utley. Those opposed, Councillor Sless and Councillor Carpenter.
Chris, thank you. Councillor Carpenter, would you like to take the floor and offer your amendment to the second item? And I'll ask you to put that on the floor, and then I'll see if anybody wants to speak in advance of that to hold it, okay?
Okay, thank you. And it's really, it's that section 15.8.5 of chapter 15 be amended to clarify that the allocated members' speaking time does not include responses from municipal staff.
This is his amendment. Seconder is
Councillor Antosky.
Councillor Antosky.
Councillor Sless threw his hand up there first, so I have to give.
All right, tie goes to the runner. I don't see anybody putting a hand up. So Councillor Carpenter, would you like to continue to speak to this? You have a little time remaining.
Just to clarify that sometimes we'll ask a question of staff, and the answer is quite lengthy, and then it runs us out of time and our 4 minutes is up. We've reduced our time limit as it is. We just want to clarify that that's not part of the clock running there. We've always said, stop the clock when staff are talking, but and it's important to hear what staff have to say, but I just want to clarify, that's all.
Councillor, thank you for that. Councillor Sless has seconded. Discussion? Councillor Wall, go ahead, you have the floor.
I feel like I am a record on repeat, and I'm so sorry, but to our incredible staff, and I want you to stop the clock while they're talking, Acting Mayor McCreary. You better watch your finger there, sir. How does this work elsewhere? This has never occurred to me. We had our 4 minutes. Now Chris starts talking and go. So,
through the chair,
Deputy Clerk, I'm being playful. I'm sorry.
That's okay. Through the chair, the procedural bylaw is council's bylaw. It is pretty much a bylaw on how council wants to govern themselves. Every municipality have different bylaws regarding their procedures. It's all unique based on the individual municipality.
So how does ours work right now, Chris? Like right now we have 4 minutes per councillor, no matter who's talking. Is that it?
Through the chair right now, each councillor per motion has 2 speaking opportunities for 4 minutes.
Okay, I want to make sure that there's no hiccups in what I'm asking you. That time starts and ends no matter who's talking currently?
Through the chair, right now in the procedural bylaw, all that it states is that each member of council has 2 speaking opportunities for 4 minutes. Depending on the chair might have a bit of a different practice. Some chairs might pause, some chairs might not pause the time. And so I believe Councillor Carpenter's amendment is just providing some clarification around that process.
Okay, as our deputy clerk with a plethora of experience, do you believe that the chairs have the appropriate tools to be able to do that? Because I mean, sometimes I do this. I talk over staff, or I talk while staff are talking to kind of like there's a dialogue back and forth. I feel like this. How's this? Would there be a case where the chair wouldn't be in charge of the timer then? That might be a responsibility of a clerk. Because I feel like if this is up to the chair is ultimately going to do whatever they want.
Through the chair to Councillor Wall, we could certainly get a new timer. We could provide training on using the timer. That's pretty low risk for the technology use that we have here in council chambers.
But nobody holds the chair accountable besides the committee members then, right?
Through the chair, that's correct. There is an appeal process through the procedural bylaw. A member of council may raise a point of order. From there, the chair can either rule on that point of order, and then depending on the answer, members of council can appeal that decision.
Acting Mayor McCreary, how much time do I have left?
Councillor Wall, I have been using this button and I'm going just as crazy as the Dickens here trying to keep track of who's speaking. You have 2 minutes, 30 seconds left. Councillor Carpenter, sorry, if I might just diverge a bit. Councillor Carpenter, do you have a clock on the whole speaking opportunity for both gentlemen?
I'm not the chair, sir.
Awesome. Okay, so I'm just going to add in a comment, and I guess this is my final thoughts on the matter, I guess, for now. I think that I was the newbie here not too long ago. And when I read the agenda well before the actual meeting, if I've got questions about things, I reach out to staff and I ask them, and it's almost very much coordinated act here in the chambers. And I worry that our council meetings are already long as it is. And if we end up asking, the incredible staff we have a question and then they go on, and then it's just, there has to be at some point a cutoff. There has to be something that expedites this process. But at the same time, I'm curious to see how everybody else thinks about this, because we're supposed to ask questions, get answers on behalf of the public that we represent. And we do that in a public setting because that's how democracy works. But I definitely don't think that we're here to waste anybody's times. And if our committee meetings are still going to keep happening at 6 p.m. at night, when our staff got here at 8 a.m. in the morning, something's got to give. We got to start meeting earlier in the day, because my time, it's not my time I care about here. It's when we get into a meeting that's 10 or 11 o'clock at night, because people like me won't shut up. Trust me, I know I talk too much. I'm thankful for that limit, or I'd never shut up.
Councillor, the chair would like to ask you to withdraw that negative remark you made about yourself.
Withdrawn.
Thank you. Councillor Martin, you have the floor. And if you could just bear with me 1 second, I'm going to reset this on 2 timers, and I'm going to continue to experiment with your indulgence. Go ahead, please.
Yeah, you almost need a one of those chess clocks so you can set it for the counselor and then hit the other button when staff are talking and go back and forth. I don't know how easy they are to reset, though. That might be a bit of a problem. We might waste 2 minutes waiting to reset the timer before anybody can start speaking. I remember a previous council, back when we had 5 minutes, there was a member of council who would spend 4.5 minutes asking a question. And then, of course, the 5 minutes would run out as staff made an attempt to answer his question. And in that time, if I was in the chair, I'd turn his mic off and he'd look at me, what? Well, his time had long run out because he took so long to ask a question. I think that what's in place now, it works. It might not be the best system, but I don't like what's being proposed in this amendment. I think we need to encourage councillors to keep their questions succinct instead of rambling on for 4.5 minutes before they get to the final point of the question. And by then, a lot of times staff have forgotten what they even started talking about because they've rambled on for so long. So I think the 4-minute speaking inclusive of the staff responding to it, is the right way to keep this thing. Otherwise, as Councillor Wall said, we're going to be meeting till 11, 12, 1 o'clock in the morning. And we've all seen that when we make the motion to go past 10 o'clock, we don't always make good decisions after 10 o'clock. And we need to make an effort to keep things succinct, and the 4-minute time limit, straight time, not stop clock as staff are speaking, is the way to do that. Thank you.
Councillor, thank you. And I'll remind committee members that you made a good point about the 10 o'clock limit, Councillor Martin. I'll remind committee members that clerk staff are here for an hour after we finish up at night, guys. So, you know, we may think about extending it beyond 10, but for staffers, you have to think of an extra hour. Councillor Sless, just bear with me till I reset everything here. I'm trying to keep 2 clocks, but it's not very efficient. Let me say that. Go ahead, Councillor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think it is important that the member of council get their 4 minutes to speak. I would hope that most members of council, in fact, I would hope all members of council, if they have questions, they would ask staff prior to the meeting. For the rest that are not asking that question, they have to sit through something that maybe they've already gone out of their way and gotten clarity for whatever it is that's being asked. They already know the answer because they did it the appropriate way. They went before the meeting and got clarity on what was not clear to them before the meeting started. So I think, having said that, I can see where we have members who perhaps have prolonged wind that can talk forever and ever and ever, that love to be on TV, that want to do this. And it's unfortunate. It penalizes those that have to sit and listen to it. So I think there has to be a balance. And I don't think that the chairman should be the person in charge of trying to keep track of this time. There's enough to do chairing the meeting without having to run a couple of clocks and try and sort out who said what and to who. But I think there was a good point made. I'm not sure. I think maybe it might have been Councillor Wall that suggested perhaps we start meeting a little earlier. We can't meet earlier to the point that it prohibits people that work from being on council, but perhaps we could start at 5 or something a little earlier that allows the meetings not to go beyond 9 o'clock or 8:30, that let staff get out of there at a reasonable amount of time and only put in a 12-hour day. So I would hope that we can keep 4 minutes of talking, but we keep it to talking, and that clarity questions and the like be asked prior to meetings of staff and not during meetings of staff. There's always going to be something come up during a debate and someone's going to say, I never thought of that, and I want to ask staff. And that should be encouraged. It just makes a stronger debate. But by the same token, that person shouldn't be penalized for that happening during a debate. So I would like to think that somebody in that room would be capable of looking after 2 clocks and that we could keep track of this and not shortcut people, because there's no question. There's times when the question could be a complicated question and it takes the staff member 3 minutes to explain what's trying to be explained. And now all of a sudden you don't have a 4-minute speaking opportunity, you have a 1-minute speaking opportunity. So I think we have to bear that in mind and make sure that everybody gets their appropriate amount of time to debate whatever it is that's being debated. So I think it's a good idea, the proposal on the floor to make the 4 minutes speaking time for the member speaking. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Councillor, thank you, and bear with me while I reset my clocks. Councillor Retley, you have the floor. Go ahead, please.
Thank you, Acting Mayor. Being in the chair is difficult enough, and I think if we've got to be careful of or time when we speak, when we don't, you know, we sometimes all are guilty of interrupting staff as they're giving us an answer. So you know, would be a few seconds here, a few seconds there, and it's easy to lose track of that time. I don't have too much of a problem with what we have in place right now. I think, as Councillor Slessor said, it's incumbent upon all of us to be well prepared coming into any meetings that we have, and asking for clarification from staff ahead of time if that's possible. When we have 3 and 4 meetings a day, that becomes a lot more difficult. But as much as I appreciate the making sure that we all get that proper time allowance, I don't think I'll be supporting this. Thank you.
Councillor, thank you. And just bear with me a second while I reset my 2 clocks. Councillor Antosky, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Perhaps I'm the only one that misunderstood this, but I think if I'm understanding correctly, you only need 1 clock to stop and start because we're only timing the councillor that's talking. I don't think we need to time. I don't think it's being contemplated that we time staff, but if that can be clarified later if I've misunderstood that. I think there's a lot of valid points being made. I'm going to support this because I find that often we're making decisions without all of the information. I take into account, like everybody says, ask your questions ahead of time, be as succinct as you can be, but these follow-ups do come and more information is needed. And sometimes we hear staff trying to rush through their explanation because they know they've got some important stuff to get to us. And I'm also concerned about staff staying late. So those are all considerations that need to be taken into account, but not at the risk of not having the proper information that we need to make sound decisions. So if we're cutting things short and not getting the information, I think maybe we're focusing on the wrong area. There is some balance that is required here. And if that means earlier meetings, or maybe it's twice a week, or maybe however that needs to look, I think that's where we need to be focusing, not cutting the time and maybe limiting our access to the information. But again, the other points are well stated. Succinct, get as much information up front as you can. But I'm going to support this. I think that we're rushed too often with this. Thank you.
Councillor, thank you. Councillor Van Tilburg, you have the floor.
As my day often starts at 5 o'clock on a council day in the morning, or I'm leaving council and my day will end the next day at 8 a.m. I don't think I'm actually here to blow a lot of wind. What I do know is that we all do ask staff questions on the things that we're interested in. And we're often not asking the same questions, each individual councillor. And so when I hear other councillors present something, it brings forward a question from myself that I wouldn't have thought to ask of staff, or that I would not need to clarify because I can't actually ask the councillor what he meant, because that's not how our protocols work. At which point I need staff then to explain what is the outcome. And we just went through some of that tonight, where staff had to say, how do we interpret the wording of what's before us? So I think that's a good thing. Of course, I was a person that didn't have a problem with the 5 minutes and then we're working staff in. So what I have been doing is, when I'm asking staff a question, there's 2 reasons that I might ask staff a question. One is I want to know, or 2, I want the public to know, and staff can explain it a heck of a lot better than I can, even if I know. And so it may be a layup question to them, but it's information I want to get out. When it's a question of what I want to know, I may seem rude because I will cut staff off when I've heard the amount of the answer that I want, and I'm curious about where I am on the time, because I'm not of the assumption that the clock is being held. That's probably been the privy of the chair, determining what's going on, but I don't know what's happening. So I might cut staff off. I have my answers and I move forward. So how we work this so that I understand there's councillors don't want to have this thing drag on and drag on. I think everybody would like to be succinct and get to the nuts and bolts of things as quick as possible. So while I may be seemingly rambling right now, the fact is that 4 to 5 minutes or whether you gave a 1 minute extension. But truthfully, I believe that unless the chair is under incredible time constraints, and sometimes that is what they're motivated by on, hey, we're getting near 9:15 and I don't want this to keep going. I understand that totally. I've got mixed feelings about this. I have enjoyed how I have missed some of the dialogue, but I have enjoyed how we are fresh at the end of a night. That has been a big difference. I do know that we have been very tired on some of the longer conversations where we may be getting into the weeds. I hope there's some other people talking about this because I have not made up my mind one way or the other. I think there's benefits in both ways. So we'll see how I vote on this.
Counselor, thank you very much. Counselor Vanderstel, you have the floor. Go ahead, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Based on what we've all witnessed in the last 3 years anyway, I think everybody has a fairly decent indication of who has a tendency and the ability to ask more questions than the next person. And in the time that it takes to ask a question and record the time during which it took to ask a question, conceivably, based on the length of staff's answers, it's exponential. So I could ask 20 questions in a 4-minute period. I could ask 40 questions in a 4-minute period. And based on the length of the answers that we have been getting from staff on very complicated issues, that adds up to 2 hours. It's absolutely incredible how much knowledge and information are packed into the heads of our staff. And if they give a fulsome answer to every question asked, our council meetings will extend beyond the point at which anyone makes a sanctioned decision. So from my perspective, we start off with the process of bringing forward a notice of motion, or we waive. That's a resolution. That's week 1. Week 2, we have a lot of time between those 2 meetings to work out the, extensive details of what the resolution means, and it can come back to council. There's a number of speaking opportunities, and that's not even talking about the committees and task forces and everything where a lot of these ideas are originated. So while I am in 100% of making sure that the public has all of the information possible in order to digest and understand a topic and an issue, I think this has the potential to open the floodgates in the amount of time that we spend in this room and the amount of time our staff spend in this room. And it is an indeterminate amount of time. There is no ceiling, there's no cap, there's no cutoff point. So my concern overall is, although one issue may be extremely important and needs to be debated, if every member of council only uses questions for their 4-minute speaking opportunity, we're into an extensive meeting. And I have concerns about that on a number of different levels, not to mention all the other topics that we have to deal with, that we have to address, and that we have to get up for work the next morning, and our staff do as well. So I understand the concerns, but I think this opens the floodgates to something that we haven't yet experienced, and quite frankly, I don't think I want to. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Councilor, thank you very much. Are there any other first-time speakers on this item? Seeing none, momentarily, I'm going to go to Councilor Martin. Councilor Wall, you've spoken twice. Councilor Martin, go ahead, please. You have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Have you got your timers ready?
Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Through you to staff, is this something that the clerk that's clerking the meeting could take over doing the timing?
Through the chair, with everything that clerk's department has to do in the background, preparing amendments, writing amendments on the fly, providing advice to the chair, I believe this would probably be something that we wouldn't be able to do.
Yeah, I kind of expected that would be the answer. Is it something that if we force this timing onto you as you're clerking the meeting, would you feel comfortable trying to tell a counselor that they've gone over their time? And if you don't want to answer that question, I understand, but it is a political question.
So I will give you an answer based on facts. So a procedural bylaw stipulates that the chair shall preside over the meetings, which includes counselor speaking times.
Okay, and that's pretty much a good answer for a difficult question that I fired at you. The time between the second committee of the whole and council is 2 weeks, correct? Generally?
Correct.
Okay. And there's lots of time within that 2 weeks for council members to get clarification and get their questions answered. So I don't see that we need to limit or to separately time the counselor from the staff member. I know I've been in the chair many times and forgot to start the timer for someone when they start speaking. To actually start and stop it and start and stop it and start and stop it, it'd just be ridiculous. And we're going to end up with counselors getting 5, 6, 7 minutes and then stopping it for answers from staff. So as it is, the chair has the option, if it is a very important issue and the answers that are coming from staff are complicated, they can allow a little bit more. I know I've let counselors go over their 4 minutes many times because they're asking an interesting line of questioning that I think needs to get out. But the chair needs the ability to cut off at 4 minutes if the counselor is being repetitive and asking the same kind of question over and over, hoping for a different answer when they already have an answer to their question. So I think this is an unnecessary amendment, and I won't be supporting it, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Councillor, thank you very much. And you enjoyed an extra 47 seconds during that speaking opportunity because of clerk time being debited from your total. Councillor Carpenter, go ahead. You have the floor, please.
Wow, I didn't think this was going to be so controversial, or so I didn't think there would be this much debate. My goodness, we spent almost an hour debating. Is it because Councillor Carpenter moved it? Is that what it is? I mean, for God's sakes, if that's the case, I'll get someone else to do stuff. I just can't believe that we're talking about. I just wanted clarification that councilor's 4 minutes is councilor's 4 minutes. Not always does a member of council ask staff a question. I've been noticing lately, and so is the public, by the way. And by the way, our job is to do the public's business in the public realm. That's democracy. Those of you who want to do somewhere else, that's fine. But I'll do my business with the public realm. But my point here is that lots of times staff will interrupt or speak and debate members of council. Watch next time. Pay attention to what's going on all around the table. We'll have a debate about something and staff will speak 6 or 7 times, more times than members of council. I have to let you know that we're the ones that were elected to run the business of council. And so all I'm trying to clarify is the 4 minutes that we have to speak should be ours. So you don't have to pass this, that's fine. But I'm making it known that staff now, I don't expect you to speak during my 4 minutes unless I ask you a question. And that's fine. Then I'm willing to use up some of that time. We'll make it clear that way. But members of council, our job is to speak on behalf of our constituents. That's who we work for. I just thought we were clarifying this. Don't matter to me whether this passes or not. I just thought I would clarify it in the bylaw. Currently, it's not clarified. And those that say, and even Councilor McCurry, quite frankly, as chair, saying this is difficult, there's a pause button on it. It's not hard to do at all. You just touch the pause button if staff are speaking, and then touch the pause button again when they're not speaking, and the clock runs. This is not as difficult as we try to make it seem. I hope the public is watching and deciphering what's going on here. My goodness. It doesn't matter to me which way you do it, either way. I just thought we would clarify it. I thought it was simple. I didn't know it was going to be a political show here. Thank you.
Councillor, thank you. Any further discussion on this item, guys? Councillor Wall, my apologies. You haven't spoken a second time. Go ahead, please.
I mean, I can understand how difficult it is to do all the things that a chair has to do and also do that. Thank you, Acting Mayor McCurry. So, God, I'm trying to just shut up, honestly. I've been working on it for almost a year. I value the public's time a tremendous amount. I also value staff time. And we have historically low attendance at council meetings. People don't come, unfortunately. And the few that do are local celebrities. I mean, I remember each and every one of their names and faces who'd be there every week at committee and council. And the people who are watching the YouTube, go right now to the City of Brantford YouTube page, and there's maybe a few hundred views on council meetings. Some less, single digit numbers, like maybe double digit numbers, but you get my point. And I don't think that anybody signs on to Rogers TV or YouTube to watch us pontificate. They want to know what the city's doing. And if they have questions, they typically call their counselor. I had 11 phone calls today from constituents, about 13 emails, all about city business. And there were comments said about the public realm. Like, I get it, but it'd be different if we had hundreds of people filling council chambers every week. Then would you want to speak, each counselor, 5 minutes plus an unlimited amount of time for staff to talk? Council meetings would go on forever. And you know what? I'm a nerd. I do watch other city council meetings. I watch the city council in my hometown in Newfoundland just because I want to see what's going on. Or I'll watch a Toronto city council meeting, or a Calgary, or a Sudbury meeting. And I mean, I don't watch them regularly, but they do things completely different than we do. Also, they meet in the daytime. It's what, 7:30 at night? And we're sitting here debating this? Like, I almost wanted to call a point of privilege, because I think that the way some things were said, it was a bit insulting to our staff and to fellow council members, because I do respect the public and I do try to ask the hard questions, but also at the same time, it is so inappropriate to ask a staff member an unbelievably difficult question on camera in the front of everybody without maybe giving them a heads up, like, hey, I'm going to be asking you this, so that they can be well versed and rehearsed and prepared to answer the question. Because if I were a professional, and I like to think sometimes that I am, I wouldn't want to be blindsided by anybody, public figure or not. And I honestly think that our system isn't broken. Not the speaking system. If anything, it needs to be improved more. Anyway, I'm sorry for breaking my own rules. I'm sorry for wasting your time.
Counselor, there are no rules which you have broken, and you certainly have not wasted anybody's time. In fact, I'm pretty sure that folks are better off for the commentary you've simply exercised. I don't see anybody else jumping up to speak, so I'm going to say a few words. And I want to first of all compliment Councillor Carpenter. He's correct speaking. He's very. Oh, I forgot to start my timer. The chair gets confused with all these resets. My apologies, folks. There we go. Councillor Carpenter speaks well of democracy. Always has, always will. And he also, he also mentions the elephant in the room, as did Councillor Van Tilburg. And let me say this about the item that's before us, okay? For councillors, I think if we practice succinctness, if we practice being on point, if we practice managing our time, and if we practice asking questions which are not open-ended questions, but rather questions which staff can clarify, one must presume that everybody here at the table has read the material before us. Some of the folks at home may not be as conversed as we are with what's going on, but there's a reason we have speaking limits, and I won't elaborate on what's been said well by others tonight. I can tell you that my brief experiment tonight with managing this clock, it's quite correct. There is a pause button on here, and I've been running 2 clocks so that I could time Councillor Wall and Councillor Martin as they ask questions. I must admit that I missed a couple of times when I should have paused, and I've let time run, and I've also done the other error So it's not an easy thing for the chair to manage. It's unreasonable to expect staff to do it because our rules and procedures place that onus strictly upon the chair of the meeting. I must say that had any of you been in my place tonight, I'm sure you would have shared my experience with trying to manage this clock. It is a bit distracting. So I'm not gonna support this tonight, but I really do want to elaborate on what Councillor Carpenter did say with respect to the interaction between staff and council members. And I, for one, have been quite firm in the chair that staff will speak when asked a question of. And I agree with Councillor Carpenter that there's quite often a lot of times where more than one staff member will offer answers or opinions. And I think that's something that we can sort out with the CAO and general managers, and to arrive at something of an understanding about, a staff member being designated on every question to be able to answer the questions. I think that's a point to go forward out of this discussion. And we can have that with staff, certainly. But as I said, I'm not going to support this. It's well-intentioned. I understand it. But in my opinion as well, the chair does not have the latitude that goes with what's been discussed tonight. It's not up to the chair to press the pause button. The procedural bylaw currently limits us to 5 minutes, period. That time should be managed by the council. Sorry, 5 minutes, Councillor, 4 minutes, 5 at council. It's up to the councillor to manage his time, his or her time. And if you want to ask open-ended questions that staff can go on at length about, it eats into your time. Democracy does not suffer. And staff aren't kept here till midnight as a result of our long-windedness. No further requests, so we will go to the question on this, Mr. Clerk, please.
The amendment to the procedural bylaw report is lost on a recorded vote of 4 to 5. Members voting in favor are as follows: Councillor Sless, Councillor Antosky, Councillor Carpenter, Councillor Van Tilburg. Those opposed, Councillor Vanderstel, Marn, Wall, Utley, and McCreary.
Chris, thank you. I'll remind members of committee that we're still on the procedure review item. Are there any other requests to speak? Seeing none, we'll go to the question on the main motion.
Through the chair, we're just waiting for Councillor Van Tilburg to submit his vote.
That'll have to be a yes. It's not there.
The procedural bylaw updates carries on a recorded vote of 8 to 1. Members of the committee voting in favor are as follows: Councillors Vanderstel, Sless, Marn, Antosky, Wall, Van Tilburg, McCreary, Utley. Members opposed, Councillor Carpenter.
Thank you, Chris. So that was a good discussion on that item, folks. We're now on to resolutions, and I'll ask Councillor Carpenter to put his resolution on the floor and let us know who your seconder is, please.
Thank you. It's moved by myself. My seconder is Councillor Brian Van Tilburg. Whereas sewage backups in basements are often caused by old and deteriorated sanitary sewer lateral pipes on the private property. And whereas lead water service pipes increase the level of lead in the tap water, which increases the risk of lead poisoning to pregnant women and children under the age of 6. And whereas the homeowner is responsible for maintenance and placement of the sanitary sewer lateral and the lead water service line located within the private property. And whereas the city of Brantford offers financial incentives since 2014 to assist homeowners who are eligible through the private sanitary sewer lateral replacement grant program, which pays 50% of the cost of the lining replacement up to $1,500 per sanitary sewer line lateral. And whereas the city offers financial incentives since 2008 to assist homeowners who are eligible through the lead financial incentive program, which pays for up to 1,000 grant and up to 3,000 interest-free loan per lead service line. And whereas the funding for private sanitary sewer lateral replacement and grant programs and the lead financial incentive program have not been adjusted for inflation since 2014 and 2008, respectively. whereas the cost of replacement of pipes has increased due to increase in labor costs, material costs, and permit fees. Now therefore, the Council of the Corporation City of Brantford hereby resolves that if the financial assistance for the private sanitary lateral replacement grant program be increased to 50% of the cost of the lining replacement up to $2,000 per sanitary sewer lateral from April 1st, 2022, and that the financial assistance for lead financial incentive program be increased up to $1,500 grant and up to $3,000 interest-bearing loan for lead water service line from April 1st. And C, that the annual funding for the above two grant programs be increased from $100,000 to $120,000 each from 2022 onwards, and the annual program funding be adjusted based upon the program uptake by residents, and that the private sanitary sewer lateral replacement grant program continue to be funded from wastewater and related reserve, and that the lead financial incentive program continue to be funded from water related reserve fund, and that the general manager of public works be authorized to implement the grant program changes approved by this council. And having this moved and seconded, I'd like to move a referral of this directly to estimates, Mr. Chair, seeking a seconder.
Thank you, Councillor Carpenter. I believe Councillor Antosky was first out of the gate. Councillor, did you wish to speak further to it before we move on to the referral?
No, I'm just going to refer it to estimates. I think the debate's better at estimates when we've had more information. Thank you.
Yeah, no, that's very cogent, Councillor. Thank you very much. Do you all have your hands up on the referral? Councillor Vanderstel.
This is a great idea. I'll support it at estimates as well. Thank you, Councillor Carpenter.
Well said, Councillor. Councillor Rutland.
Thank you, Acting Mayor. I'd like to thank Councillor Carpenter for bringing this forward. It's certainly a need, but we have a very challenging budget for 2022. And I think, you know, it's not a lot of money in the big picture, but add this and maybe 5 or 6 or 7 other things, that's going to make budget process even more difficult for 2022. So I'll be pleased to support the referral.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Sless.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have a question through to staff, if I could, please. Are we using the entire budget that we currently have?
Through you, Mr. Chair. We use close to $100,000 is what we've got for each program, and we use for water close to $70,000. It depends on each year how many applications are submitted, but on average we would use $70,000 to $80,000.
Okay, on both programs?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Van Tilburg, go ahead, please.
Yeah, if I could you tell me if our uptake went down during the COVID period?
Through you, Mr. Chair, it has been steady. We did steady, yes. We did see a slight decline in 2020, but then it kind of picked up. So I would say it has been steady.
Very good. Thank you very much for that information. And I want to thank Councillor Carpenter for bringing this forward and sending it to estimates.
Thanks, Councillor Van Tilburg. Councillor Martin.
Yes, thank you. Just a question of clarification through to staff. That 70 to 80,000, is that for each program, or is that the combined total?
Through you, Mr. Chair, that is for each program. It is a capital budget item for each program.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. I see no further speaking requests. I also will echo the sentiments of everybody tonight. Councillor Carpenter has done good work here, and this will go to estimates, and hopefully it will bubble to the top. Could I ask the clerk to go to the question?
The referral of item 7.1 to the Estimates Committee carries unanimously on a recorded vote. Members of the committee voting in favor are as follows: Councillors Vanderstel, Sless, Martin, Antosky, Wall, Van Tilburg, Carpenter, McCreary, Utley.
Chris, thank you. We're now moving on to item 7.2, which is an item that I'll be bringing forward. So I'm going to ask Councillor Sless to assume the chair, if he would, please.
Thank you, Councilor Curry. Would you like to move your motion and identify your seconder, please?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, the seconder will be Councillor Wall, and it's a rather lengthy resolution, so you may want to fill your drink bottles. Reads as follows. Whereas the City of Brantford's Cultural Hub Task Force is anticipated to meet its mandate in June 21 and make recommendations to Council by third quarter 21, and whereas Council established a Consolidated Museums and Archives Facility Task Force in 2020 to focus on and make recommendations with respect to actions that should be taken by the City of Brantford to consult with the Brantford Museum community, and larger community to determine the desire for and feasibility of a consolidated museum facility in the City of Brantford. And whereas the mandates of both task forces align and complement one another, whereas efficiencies can be realized by incorporating the research and deliverables of the Cultural Hub Task Force with the mandate and anticipated deliverables of the Consolidated Museum and Archives Task Force, now therefore be it resolved that the Cultural Hub Task Force be disbanded upon completion of identifying a location as the final deliverable within its mandate, that the Consolidated Museum and Archives Task Force be disbanded, having not assembled, that a new task force be established and named the Community Heritage and Cultural Space Task Force, and that the Community Heritage and Cultural Space Task Force be comprised of the following members of Brantford City Council, namely Councillors Antosky, McCreary, Utley, Sless, and Wall, and 4 citizen appointees, and the task force be supported by City of Brantford staff liaisons selected by the CAO to provide technical and operational advice and assistance, and the clerk or designate to assist with agenda preparation, minute taking, and so on, and other staff is needed to support the mandate and deliverables. And F, that the deliverables of the Community Heritage and Cultural Space Task Force be established to serve as a governance entity that focuses on and makes recommendations with respect to actions that should be taken by the City of Brantford to consult with the Brantford Museum community and larger community to determine the desire for and feasibility of a consolidated museum and archives facility in the City of Brantford. And number 1, conduct consultation with the wider cultural community as well as the staff and volunteers of museums within the exterior boundaries of the City of Brantford to meet the International Council of Museums definition of a museum to determine the desire for and feasibility of community heritage and cultural space in the City of Brantford. Number 2, conduct public consultation to determine the desire for community heritage and cultural space in the City of Brantford incorporates the research results conducted by the Cultural Hub Task Force, including the feasibility study for a mid-sized performance space. Number 3, solicit expressions of interest in the heritage and cultural community and other applicable public interest groups. 4, investigate the feasibility of relocating and incorporating the Brantford Farmers Market into a community heritage and cultural space. 5, investigate the feasibility and demand for a large shared community space that could accommodate charitable events such as the Brantford Symphony Orchestra's annual book fair, community resource service, Brantford Food Bank, Christmas baskets programs, and other programs in the city. Develop a budget for a community heritage and cultural space in Brantford if the project is deemed desired. Identify a location for a community heritage and cultural space in Brantford if the project is deemed desirable. Number 8, develop a feasibility study and action plan that outlines how the task force can be a catalyst and advocate for the project. And G, that the term of the task force be established until such time as the task force in consultation with support staff recommends disbandment having achieved their mandate. And H, that the Community Heritage and Cultural Space Task Force be directed to report to COWOA on a proposed location and capital and operational funding needs proposed sources by December 31, 2021. Thank you, Mr. Chair. That is the resolution that Councillor Wall and I are presenting for Council's consideration this evening.
Thanks. You, Councilor McCreary, did you wish to speak to your amendment or to your resolution rather? Sorry.
I'm thinking I'll wait till everybody else has spoken, Councilor.
Okay. Are there any other speakers? Seeing none, the floor is yours, Councilor McCreary.
Well, thank you very much. Council members will note that there were some expressions of support that we received today, one from Mr. Philp as a verbal delegation and a letter of support, and I believe another one from the Military Museum folks and one from the Great War Centennial Association. And I've had some preliminary discussions with a great many groups in town. They all seem to be fairly enthusiastic about going forward on this and all are interested in participating. I've also had some discussions around funding, and there appear to be some funding sources that are not Brantford taxpayers that we can quite quickly pursue and perhaps line up. And I hope that this will meet with everybody's approval tonight. It doesn't cost us a nickel to do this preliminary work, and the outcome of this could be it could be a good thing for this community. I look at the genesis of some of the good things we've done in this community, and what comes to mind is the work we've done on brownfields. That started with an idea like this by Councillor Chesky Smith several decades ago. I look at the Gretzky Center, which did for hockey and sport and fitness what we would hope to do for culture and community groups by way of the outcome of this resolution before us tonight, Mr. Chair. And I'm hoping this may be the start of something good and fine for this community. And the members that have volunteered to sit on this committee certainly will work to that end and do their utmost to come back to this council with a recommendation by year's end that hopefully will direct us to follow this path to fruition. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councilor McCurry. Are there any other speakers to this resolution? Seeing none, I would ask the clerk to call the question, please.
Item 7.2, Community Heritage and Cultural Space Task Force resolution carries unanimously on a recorded vote of 9-0. Members of the committee voting in favor are as follows: Councillors Vanderstel, Sless, Martin, Antosky, Wall, Van Tilburg, Carpenter, McCreary, and Utley.
With that, I'll turn it over to you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Helping Chair, Councillor Sless, for your indulgence in letting me bring that forward tonight. Let me now call on Councillor Utley for your notice of motion, and if we could just have the title, please, Councillor.
Thank you, Acting Mayor. Brantford Public Library Board, Southwest Community Centre.
Thank you very much, Councillor Utley. Thank you to all members of council and members of staff for all the good work we've done tonight. And those of you watching at home, thanks for tuning in. We are now adjourned, and we'll see you again soon.
Good night, everyone.
Hey,